I remember being 12 years old and seeing magazine covers of when Ninoy Aquino passed away, and his face was everywhere. His body on the tarmac of the international airport. So those things are burned into my memory. And then seeing footage of the funeral processions. I mean, I was seeing that on television in real time rather than reading about them in history books.
And not unlike our show where there's different perspectives. You know, Leia gets her perspective from living there while it was happening. My family immigrated here in '79. And we were part of a very active Filipino-American community. So we watched it from here on the television screen. Like Ninoy's assassination, like that image has been burned in my brain since I was 10 years old when it happened. So it's been interesting that as Filipinos, we can compare our family histories and our stories from different angles from about the same events that happened in our families.
Jose, there are, of course, critics who say that in choosing to focus on Imelda Marcos, you are humanizing and centering the story of a vicious dictator. What do you say?
Well, what I say to that is I think what we're doing is telling a crucial part of Filipino history, which you can't really tell without America's involvement in it. So to me, we're not telling a story about the Marcoses. We're telling a story about what happened in this moment and really the people power revolution, right? That peaceful revolution of people that took down that dictatorship. And like, what does that mean in this moment? Right? Not only in this country, but around the world when fascism is on the rise. Like we're seeing that happening globally. The show is even more relevant now than, you know, when this show debuted at the Public Theater 10 years ago.
And that's what's difficult, right? Like I think the danger of not telling the story is to kind of put it away. And that's the danger when you don't talk about the difficult parts of history is when they begin to repeat themselves.
The show is a great gateway to conversations. It's a great gateway to research. It's a great jumping off board for people to finally say, this is what happened.
My biggest hope is that people go home from our show and start conversations and start the conversations that were difficult to begin with, even the non-Filipinos, you know, and I think we've seen at the stage door now, we've been, you know, running for a couple of weeks, people saying, I didn't know any of this. And I'm going to go home and Google some more and try to figure out, you know, and it's fascinating and I feel like we've done our job when people say, I'm going to go home and learn some more about my personal history, because you just spent an hour and a half telling us about your history.
Arielle, much has been made of the fact that this is an all-Filipino cast. That is, of course, valuable and interesting. What's almost more interesting to me is that Filipinos are the fourth largest diaspora in this country, and there have not historically been stories that center the Filipino experience. What does it mean to you to be the center of a story that is centering the Filipino experience?
It still gives me chills to think about the role that I get to have, to lead this company. And to be able to be playing a Filipino character for the first time in my career. I've played literally everything else under the sun. And I've never thought that I'd be able to play a Filipino until now. So being able to actually connect to that Filipino history, for me personally, is life-changing. I feel like Filipinos, a lot of Filipinos in the diaspora do feel like that and do feel like a hidden minority. I think because a lot of us we don't know what ethnicity, other people don't know what ethnicity we are.
We assimilate it too well.
We
Way too well,
right?
That's what we're known for. You know, we're the country that got colonized a dozen times, so we become the queen. We become the kings and queens of assimilation.
Who was it that called us little brown Americans? Somebody.
Rudyard Kipling, when he wrote the poem "The White Man's Burden," to implore the United States to take the Philippines in the first exercise in empire. Sorry, history has to point that out. Yeah, that we were uncivilized people, half devil and half child. Was the quote.
How dare.
Poem. So I have to say, though, listening to us talk about this, I think of this show as like, you can't tell the history of America without Filipinos, right? And to me, I see the show as a real reclamation of our place in this country. Like, it's not a surprise that we're telling the story on Broadway. And I think anybody who knows a Filipino knows that we throw the best parties. And then,
Never ending.
Never
ending. Doesn't end. There's food for everybody.
Food for
never
10 times
ending,
the number
right?
of people there, too.
And so the fact that we are throwing the biggest party on Broadway and that everybody's invited, like whenever I get out that subway and then I walk to that theater on 53rd and Broadway and I looked at that sign, and anyone who's Filipino knows, oh my God, wait, is that the flag iconography? What are they doing? I just still get chills. And then I'm thinking to myself, we are mainstream. We've always been mainstream Filipinos. And we have Lea Salonga here, you know? So
I can't believe it.
I mean, she's like right here. So it's interesting because when Clint Ramos, my producing partner, and I, when we came on board, I was like, how do we get Lea?
Yeah.
Then how do we get Gabby Wilson? How do we get her? Then how do we get Jokoy? And then any day now we're going to announce Apple Diap. Right? Like, how do we get all of the Filipinos and like, so people understand that this is absolutely that, but everybody's invited, right? And that
And we're not
message,
invisible anymore.
And we're not invisible.
Yeah.
And guess what? We never were. You just weren't looking close enough.